This procedure is for a truck with manual lockouts only. Aftermarket manual lockouts, no vacuum assist. If you've still got the automatic lockouts, there's a whole lot of other stuff that needs changed while you're in there. This is a 2000 F250 Super Duty with a 7.3 turbo diesel in it. It has a form of the death wobble going on. And this passenger side U-joint is hanging up, and it's causing the axle to catch the hub assembly. And at times, since the U-joint's bound up, it's trying to straighten the wheel out, because it's getting, whenever you make a turn, forcing those U-joints to get galled up at an angle, and then when the wheel straightens back up, the axle's still at an angle in here, and it binds up inside of the wheel bearing assembly and tries to drag the U-joint loping. So I'll take this whole assembly off and change the U-joint in it. I took the lockout off of it. Still had a problem with it hanging up inside. You can spin the wheel on this, but if you spin the axle, it catches a wheel and turns even with the lockout out of it. Where it's wobbling, or it's stuck inside here. And I'll dig into it. This had an aftermarket lockout assembly on it, and I just took the Allen heads out of it and a quill snap ring out of this, and then pulled the whole assembly out. The next thing I need to do is jack it up, get this wheel off the ground, take this wheel off. Went ahead and sprayed some lube in around these studs. This rotor's not going to be galled on there, so I need to go in behind and take these 21 millimeters out of the caliper hanger, and then support that whole apparatus up on a frame somewhere. Once you get your caliper off, mark your rotor if you're reusing it, so you don't have to worry about it being irregular when you put it back on. Unfasten your ABS cable from all fasteners along the brake hose and the frame. And then there's a 5/16 headed screw on the top of the spindle holding it to the wheel bearing, more or less, or where it comes off the wheel bearing. Undo it. The caliper is secured over the top of the leaf spring with a bungee cord. I've got the lockout out of this. You can see what's happening here. It's dragging the axle with it. This should be free, but it's turning and binding. Whenever you turn the steering wheel, it will put this shaft into a bind. As it grips it, it puts it in more of a bind, which keeps it going and wobbling. I kind of think the wheel bearing's a little noisy too. It's got a bunch of miles on it. I'm cleaning off around this wheel bearing, and I'm going to spray some penetrating oil on this surface and in behind it. There's a snap ring clip and some spacers that need removed out of there and stacked in order so they can go back in the same way they came out. I've already took them out. I sprayed the 21 millimeter nuts down. It has the wheel bearing studs sticking out through the spindle. There's 4 of them. Those will have to be removed. Went ahead and took the quarter pin out of this outer tie rod end. I'm going to pop it because this thing's so hard to steer back and forth. maybe I'll have a little better control so I can get at those wheel bearing nuts. It's a 21 millimeter. It's an optional step. It's heavy. Had to get up underneath that pry bar off of this. Looks like where a stabilizer shock would have mounted, and lift that up out of this hole. It was hitting this arm on the lower control arm there. It'll be kind of fun to put back in. But that, let's see, spindle do the same thing. So you can get these bolts back in there. Without jacking the steering wheel around. Either the nuts or the studs will come out. Either is acceptable. I got all 4 of these out. Now it's time to get this hub assembly off here. Just tap on the back of the hub a little bit. Not too hard. If you really beat it, you want to damage wheel bearing if you're reusing this hub assembly. If you're putting new wheel bearings on it, drive it home. But that's got me loosened up. This is an opportune time to test your ball joints. These ones aren't that old, so just wedge a screwdriver between the U-joint cap and the upper ball joint and lift up down on the spindle. If you see any movement going up and down, you need ball joints. You need, if you any gaps here, lifting up and down when you pick up on this spindle. But these aren't going to be bad. They're from Ford, so they're not that old. Now get a hold of your wheel bearing assembly. Once you get it, just wiggle it off of there. And don't tear up your ABS wire. It should be long enough to set it on the ground. It'll be pretty heavy too. That's nice. I go from the back side and take like a long 1/4 inch extension or something and beat that seal forward out this end. Check your roller bearings for any of them missing or damaged. Dry shaft for damage. Replace as necessary. Just take your blunt deal, push the seal, just kind of hit it and work it around. From 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock on this side. Then turn the spindle back the other way and go in behind and do it again. Till you walk this seal out of this housing. It'll go so far and then come on out with any luck. There it is. It's a jewel. If you're reusing it, note the orientation. Since the vacuum lockouts don't work on this anymore, I'll be sticking this one back in just to keep the dry shaft at bay. Okay, straighten the spindle up and pull the axle out. Just be advised, when the axle comes out, it's going to drag any trash that's in the axle tube with it. and it'll have to be cleaned off. And to put it back in there, what I'll be doing is lining the axle tube with about an 1.5 inch wide piece of thin cardboard all the way back to the seal, up to the housing back there, and guiding the axle along it to keep from picking up rust and debris out of the axle tube and contaminating the rear end grease. And I stick a tie rod separator in behind that axle to pry it out. I don't know what the problem is. Should have just came right out of there. I don't know. What's the bunch of it? I don't know what his problem was. But see, the U-joints are frozen up. These two caps here. The U-joint cap frozen up. Put the whole length of the drive shaft up. That's what was causing it to buck when you cut the steering wheel. The housing is actually cone shaped back in there to help guide this axle up without damaging the seal. So I'm going to press these U-joints out. Before I take any action on any of these joints, I put a mark for the center line that's installed originally, just for semantics. I put a couple marks on it just in case the marks get washed off. Close here, I'll be heating this up probably, and first thing I'm going to do is to hose these clips down that hold the caps in place with penetrating oil. Because they'll need that. Now I'll take a screwdriver or whatever and work these retaining clips out from the inside that's holding the caps. Like I say, be sure and put a mark the way that it goes back together. If you're in a big hurry, you can just take a cutting torch and cut these crosses off and then press the caps out. You don't even have to take the retaining clips loose then. You got plenty of ventilation to burn the steel. And watch out for popping grease. That baby is really stuck. A vise is going to come in handy to hold this while you deal with these snap rings. There's the end of it there. I'll have to get in behind it and knock the snap ring back. These are pretty thin, so hopefully they don't put up too much of a fight. I'm just taking a screwdriver underneath the end of it, hitting it with the hammer. This one started moving. Be sure both ends start moving so you don't break the clip off. When I was hitting against this one, it's kind of springy and not moving, so that means the other side's stuck. I'll have to flip it over and get the other side moving. Because if you get a piece of one broke off, sometimes it can be something else to get it out of there. It's just bouncing. There's always one in the crowd. Stuck at the press. I got a pretty good load. You got to watch how much you put on the ears or you'll bend them together until the drive shaft out of balance. So nothing's moving, so I'm going to have to heat it up. And that's the other purpose for garage stools, is to hold this up. It's just the right height for the press. fire the torch up and heat those ears up. Get the stuff moving here. Take a little while. It was really stuck in there. I'm going to take a hammer and chisel and get a hold of the clip retaining groove, cutting a U-joint cap, and beat that cap off of there. The one that was frozen, one of them was frozen. I took it outside here, let it cool off so it don't burn the rubber pieces up. I'll spray some penetrating oil on the other. I got one cap off. Which it ain't cooperating, so I'll have to stick it back in the press. All this stuff is extremely hot, so you should have gloves on if you don't know what you're doing, and eye protection. Well, to push the cap back through, took the cutting torch again to heat it up so it'd go back through the eyelet. That's really an outfit. That's just half of it. It took half an hour to deal with it. I'll do the other half now. There's one more cap out. That took another 10 or 15 minutes heating that up. Take it outside and pull the cap off. Let it cool down a little bit. Flip it over and drive the cap back through this side with the U-joint cross. Heck with it while it's still hot. I think I'll just push it back through because I had to heat the other one up and get it back through. Just want to make sure that it starts down in there square. If you get the cap jackknifed, you're going to have a problem. Just want to go forward. That's the easiest one yet. Once in a while you get a break. Not that often, but once in a while. Smoking. Nice. I'm going to let that cool off a little while. Be sure not to damage your splines on the other end of the drive shaft. Hot. Now the U-joints are apart, the caps are out of the yokes. It's cooled off. I put this new U-joint into a C-clamp and compressed it I was checking the distances between where the snap ring's going to set and the distance of these ears to see if they got mashed down any. And I think one did just a little bit, but the short yoke seems fine. The long one's compressed just a fraction. These clips will rest against the sharp edge of this lip toward the inside. You need that lip plus the width of a clip on both sides. Should be about that, and it should be that on the other side, minimum. Because to find out if you got these ears smashed together and stick the new U-joint in there, it's too late to prevent a bunch of work and or damage to the new U-joint. This one's just a fraction too close. It might not go. So I took just a hand file, dress these ears up. Just a thousandth of an inch or so, get the rust off of it, square them up, and square up where the ends of the clips are going to set, and made them pretty shiny and smooth again. And I took some 80 grit and cleaned the scale out of these holes, but not enough to wear them down, just to get the debris, raised up debris out of them, and if there happened to be any burrs in it. So that these caps, they got to go through hard, but not impossible. Just if they go through loose, this is done. But I'm sure it's going to put up a good fight, which is going to put more stress on these ears to close them up again. So 80 gritted these out some. And filed the inside of the ears, the rust off the scale, so that they're shiny. That should give me the thousandths or two I need to make sure the U-joint caps aren't loaded down so bad, and put slack in the back sides of them. I'm going to do the yoke, the short yoke now.